What's up, everybody? It's your boy Ryan, and this is the Thunder Channel. On nootropics, on testosterone, on using what we can within reason to make us feel, perform, and function awesomely. I'm your host, Ryan Michael Ballow. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Hit the bell to get notified of all the content I'm pushing out. Better off just getting the YouTube app, because then in real time it will tell you, hey, Ryan just pumped out a video, or Ryan is live. A lot of folks are going, I missed the live streams. Get the YouTube app, subscribe, hit the bell, and then you'll get notified. Turn on notifications on your phone. A couple products support this broadcast, and there are coupon codes I want to give you guys. I'll explain this all at the end of the video, but super quickly. Cortex Nootropic Stack, 40% off. Coupon code is 40 now. Okay, that's basically like a BOGO. Secondarily, 6 to 8 hours of fire blood and motivation and energy. The Torque Nootropic Stack, most purchased stack on the web. Coupon code 25 now saves you 25% on that stack. So you got mega coupon codes, mega sales. I know you guys spent a lot of money on Christmas, etc. for both of our nootropic stacks. Down in the links in the description below or at livecortex.com. Coupon codes will be down there too. Okay, friends. So yes, let's talk about 9-MEBC. That's what I'm referring to. It is the most potent dopaminergic nootropic that we have. Aside from, it's not the most potent dopaminergic compound because there's drugs that are targeting dopamine, or at least dopamine receptors, like bromocriptine, pramipexole, cabergoline, things of this nature. But they're not nootropics. They're very serious compounds, and I wouldn't really suggest you take them unless you absolutely have to. 9-MEBC is like a perfect middle spot, and it isn't just agonizing receptor sites. It's actually modifying transcription factors that have to do with dopamine projection, dopamine cell body creation, and potentially dopamine receptors. The compound also in the literature fosters the upregulation of dopamine conversion, basically, by making the enzymes work better, namely tyrosine hydroxylase. So pretty impressive compound, initially studied for Parkinson's, and that's ultimately what it was created for, at least being studied for. But nootropics users figured out that they can take it, engage in a degree of dopamine restoration, partial or full, and otherwise, which we're going to talk about, provide a dopamine-like stimulant effect. So I want to talk about what you can stack it with, because people usually only think about 9-MEBC in this context of dopamine restoration, which I think is smart. But at the same time, I take 9-MEBC in an acute manner to get a dopaminergic-like effect, right? And I have clients that take 9-MEBC in that same manner. So I'm going to run through 5 stacks to give you an idea of what you can stack 9-MEBC with and what seems to be the most likely effective nootropics to bring into a stack with 9-MEBC. And this is based off of client data, so you know that you can trust it. The first stack, so what do we got here? Stack 4 is the following. It is 10 milligrams 9-MEBC, 100 milligrams teacrine, 90 milligrams citicoline, and 700 milligrams of aniracetam. So as you see in this particular stack, you can stack 9-MEBC with teacrine. You're going to see that being a pretty common theme. Citicoline, somewhat similar mechanisms, or at least, citicholine's working on dopamine as well as 9-MEBC, and 700 milligrams of aniracetam. So you can stack these, you can stack BC with those compounds, and especially the aniracetam. I think in this particular stack, what we're doing is we're turning up brain energy. We're forcing, with teacrine, we're forcing dopamine release with teacrine as well. I mean, any of the caffeine analogs are going to make you release a little more dopamine. We're sensitizing dopamine receptors with citicoline or CDP-choline, and then we're forcing cholinergic function and release, in the hippocampus and among other regions with aniracetam. We're also fostering AMPA function. So you're doing a lot with this particular stack, but where I think the other compounds complement 9-MEBC is in their dopaminergic work largely, besides aniracetam. You got teacrine making you release more dopamine. You have citicoline working on dopamine receptors and a little more dopamine release. And that is extremely synergistic with a primary chemical 9-MEBC that is centrally working on dopamine. So that's stack number 1, to give you an idea of some things that you can stack 9-MEBC with. I've got another stack for you. So this is stack 2 in this document, and it's a very simple stack. It is the following: 500 milligrams oxiracetam, 10 milligrams 9 MEBC, so not a whole lot. 50 milligrams citicoline. Now, this ended up being a powerful stack despite it looking very simple and kind of looking like it's not, a particularly effective stack, right? I think a lot of people make the mistake looking at nootropic stacks like, oh, it looks simple, they're not even dosed high, must not be effective. Not true, and kind of a fallacy. It's really a bad way to look at how you're going to be approaching nootropics, because then you're going to inevitably run into overages of neurotransmitters and probably side effects if you think more is more. This stack ended up being really, really effective. Oxiracetam, a cholinergic mainly, right? Gets your brain to release and fire more choline from certain regions. The hippocampus particularly helps with working memory. Also going to stimulate glutamate subtype receptor called the AMPA receptor. That fosters long-term potentiation, which also helps memory and gives you some energy. Then we have 9-MEBC in the mix, small dose, 10 milligrams. At that dose, you still get an effect for most folks, especially when taking it acutely. And then again, we have citicoline, another compound that you're going to pretty routinely see in these stacks. And as a chemical to stack with 9-MEBC, that makes sense because, again, it's working on dopamine. So that's stack number 2. Stack number 3 is the following. 50 milligrams 9-MEBC, so a pretty hefty dose. 120 milligrams phenylpiracetam. Now, this was done when phenylpiracetam itself was available. You could dose 30 to 50 milligrams of phenylpiracetam hydrozide and get the same effect. 40 milligrams citicoline, 40 milligrams bromantane, and 500 milligrams Alcar. Now, this brings in a whole set of new compounds that you can stack with 9-MEBC. You've got phenylpiracetam. Well, that's a DRI, right? It's going to help dopamine stay around, reuptake inhibition of dopamine. So it prevents clearing and recycling of dopamine. Is that good for later? Not really. Is it great for now? Definitely. And you can sort of offset some of that negative effect from keeping all that dopamine around by taking something like Mucuna thereafter, or getting some tyrosine-rich foods into your diet. But what's important about this is there are additional compounds here that we haven't really talked about. Yes, phenylpiracetam stacks exceptionally well with 9-MEBC. And again, you could use phenylpiracetam hydrozide because that's what's available these days in lower doses to get the same effect. Stacks incredibly well. Citicoline, we've already talked about that. Bromantane, one of, if not the best agent to stack with 9-MEBC because of what it's doing, which is synthesizing more dopamine from precursor. So you have, this dual, it's really, a 5 or 6x like dopamine optimization, combo, right? Because you've got the 9-MEBC working on making you make more dopamine. You have tyrosine hydroxylase, which is a convergent enzyme being optimized by 9-MEBC. But at the same time, with bromantane, you have tyrosine hydroxylase upregulation or fostering, and then you also have dopa decarboxylase, the secondary final step conversion. And then lastly, Alcar. Yes, it stacks incredibly well with Alcar. And you could take BC and Alcar just by themselves, and you probably get a pretty significant result. So that is stack 3 of things that you can stack 9-MEBC with that ultimately ended up being really great stacks for clients of mine. Stack 4 is 5 adjustment 1 on this document. So we are here. Is the following. 45 milligrams 9-MEBC, 55 milligrams theobromine, 150 milligrams teocrine. Okay, very, very powerful stack. Seems simple, very, very strong stack. So we're bringing in some new agents, right? We have theobromine. That is a adenosine receptor antagonist. It's a wakefulness promoting, energy promoting light stimulant, which ends up stacking really well with something that's fostering dopamine, right? Because stimulants and dopamine work hand in hand. Even when you take cholinergics, for the record, you're actually getting yourself to release more dopamine. Stimulants do that. And then, of course, we have teocrine in the mix. We've got dual adenosine receptor antagonism, again, promoting wakefulness, forcing you to release more dopamine. And then you've got 9-MEBC, which, by the way, also sensitizes you to other stimulants, like makes other stimulants seem more powerful, which is really, really interesting about the compound. And that's through dopaminergic mediated mechanisms. Very, very synergistic, powerful combination, not for the faint of heart. Probably going to give you good stimulation for 5-6 hours and give you that kind of motivated dopamine energy. Last stack I'm going to give you, that's stack 12 on this document. So let's go down. There it is. So this is a complex one with some of the same compounds that we've talked about with the addition of one new one. And it is the following: 50 milligrams bromantane, 50 milligrams phenylpiracetam hydrazide, so you get to see this in action, 50 milligrams CDP choline, 50 milligrams 9-MEBC, and then 200 milligrams of L-theanine, just to tone things down and make sure it's balanced out. It ended up being really, really balanced and good for this particular user. And as we see again, phenylpiracetam or phenylpiracetam hydrazide, one of the best compounds to stack with 9-MEBC. Bromantane, probably the best compound to stack with 9-MEBC. Second to those would be teacrine, as you've seen in some of these other examples. Obviously, choline or CDP choline works really well with 9-MEBC because they're kind of both fostering dopamine function. And then we've got some theanine in there, which does have a little bit of dopaminergic action, but that's mostly in the stack because I wanted to make sure, based on this person's previous responses to pretty stimulatory dopaminergic stacks, that there wasn't overstimulation, right? It ended up working like perfectly with 200 milligrams of theanine, okay? So what does this tell us? It tells us that 9-MEBC, though, traditionally and in the literature is used and can be used for dopamine restoration over a 30 to 50 day period with 20 milligrams or more of consistent use. That's very important. And that's in the literature as well. But also that teacrine, L-carboxyracetam, aniracetam, citicoline, theobromine, theanine, phenylpiracetam, bromantane can be stacked with 9-MEBC, and those are really the most optimal compounds that you'd want to stack BC with. You okay? There are other chemicals that you can stack 9-MEBC with, but I would be, judicious about doing so because, again, you start stacking it with, first of all, non-nootropics, things that aren't nootropics but that are, energizing or something, then you may run the risk of overstimulation. That's why you have to be careful. I certainly wouldn't be stacking it with any other pharmaceutical that affects dopamine. I would not be doing that. I would stick with strictly nootropics that are safe and tested and throughout the community and have research behind them. But Mucuna is another example that's not on this list. You could stack BC with Mucuna and you'd get a good effect. You just have to be careful about how you dose it. Things like royal jelly, which do affect dopamine, cordyceps, which affect dopamine, I think D1 or D2 receptors, and other compounds that are nootropics that have action on dopamine. Yeah, you could stack BC with it, but again, you'd have to be a little careful about it. You'd have to formulate the right doses. And, pretty much in my client work, I've stuck with those 8 or 9 compounds that I rattled off in conjunction with 9-MEBC because it seems to be the most well tolerated and also the set of compounds that produces the least amount of side effects and the most amount of efficacy. Okay, so BC isn't just for restoring dopamine. You can use it to resensitize your response to stimulants, right? You take it for a certain degree of time, call it 30 milligrams for 30 days straight without cycling, and then cycle off. And yeah, your caffeine's probably going to hit a little stronger. Your theobromine's probably going to hit a little stronger. Your teacrine, same thing. Any stimulant, nootropic, is probably going to be more pronounced in its effect, and that is through a dopamine-mediated mechanism. Okay? Thanks so much for watching. I hope that's been helpful. So let's talk about the coupon codes. Yeah, Cortex stack right now is 40% off. That's the cheapest it's ever been. We've never run a 40% off on the Cortex stack. It's almost like a BOGO because when you buy one, get one free, you're basically just buying what you end up ultimately paying for 2 bottles is it's like half off or something, right? So you're basically kind of getting a BOGO. So your best option is to get 2 bottles with doing the 40% off on the Cortex stack. Look, motivation, mental energy, verbal fluency, the ability to have that dopamine drive is important for productivity. It's super, super important. Some of the stuff that I may not want to tackle, I just take Cortex for. Or if I want to be super verbally fluent, I'll take Cortex. I can also use it as a pre-workout, and you can too. The stack is multifaceted, very powerful nootropic stack. Down below in the description, use the coupon code 40NOW to get 40% off the Cortex stack literally right now. I know you guys spent money on Christmas and New Year's and you guys did stuff and now you're looking to save, so we're dropping prices on stuff. We're offering coupon codes. Secondarily, the most purchased nootropic stack on the internet. Torque made waves in the beginning, and I was like, wow, is this just because we launched a new product and people want to try it? It continued and it got like way better. Like, we're just moving inventory so quicker than we've ever moved inventory on Cortex or anything else in the roster, because people recognize that 6-7 days a week, because Torque is a sustainable nootropic, that you can take 2 capsules of Torque and you're in for 6 to 8 hours. It's very noticeable. You don't want a question of whether a nootropic is placebo or whether it's affecting you or not. You know, regular folks who are just getting into nootropics, or folks that have been taking nootropics but just want sustainability, like, there shouldn't even be a question. Torque, there's no question. You take 2 capsules, within 25 minutes, brain activates, you turn on, and you function really well for a considerable period of time. 25% off. Coupon code is 25 now. 25 now, livecortex.com. You enter it literally at checkout, and it'll take substantial amounts of money off of both Cortex and Torque. Again, Cortex 40 now is the coupon, 40% off, and Torque 25 now, 25% off. If you need my help, I've got slots open. In fact, a bunch just opened because I just got completed or finished with a good degree of clients. So I've got slots for 3 months, for 6 months, for the annual Nootropics and Energy Consulting Program. Basically, I'm the world's foremost expert in helping people that are in cognitive deficits or cognitively deficient states where they're not functioning well, they don't really have brain energy, and they can't get stuff done, and taking them to the point where not only are they at a great baseline, but then super optimized on top of that. I've worked with NFL players, I've worked with famous actors, I've worked with owners of companies we all know about, very popular people, and I've worked with regular folks that own IT companies or are writing a book or being an entrepreneur at some other capacity, or even working for corporate. Hire me, livecortex.com, on the consultations tab at the menu, and book, and let's get going, my friends. Pleasure hanging out with you. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for watching. Live streams coming probably later this week, so look forward to that, and I'll talk to you soon.